start knocking on doors if you're interested in that. There's plenty of other opportunities out there instead of looking for who's already doing science, and that will get you a more general readership than a dedicated science.
And along with that, I mean, that's something that I come from an artistic background, and a small thing that a group of bloggers tried to do last year was put together a site that would, have specifically paleontology-based art all in one place. And over the last, like you say, once you knock on those doors, you generalize science in a different way. We've suddenly got a number of artists. All of a sudden, we've got some people from comic books that are saying, "Hey, I just did this wicked picture of a dinosaur." And then it's also leading into print magazine and things like that. And once you start, the problem is being too inward-looking and saying, "I'm going to create a science site." The generalist sites, like you say, I mean, if they have a science section, it can broaden out into other media. Other people will be touched by it in how they look at things.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I enjoy experimenting with is sort of the flip side of what Michael was talking about how in a general interest magazine you go through things and you come across science within this context of just generally interesting articles, and getting people who are not necessarily interested in science per se to get interested. The flip side of that you can do online is that you can be a virus and get out and infect people's minds. So sometimes I will think about that. Like I will find beautiful images that connect with something I want to write about, and those images get replicated in other places. Like this sculptor who makes beautiful glass sculptures of viruses and bacteria. I found out about it, and I started blogging about it, and then that guy started getting a lot of coverage in a lot of different places. I wrote about a parasitic wasp that sort of turns cockroaches into zombies, and I would find that in like video game discussion forums. Someone would be like, we got to make a game out of this, man. And then they come back and they like find out about animal behavior and things like that. And and amazingly enough, I have been able to I have been interviewed by tattoo magazines, and I have been talking to them about science. So there are people reading tattoo fan magazines who are getting a little bit of science because they're looking at these tattoo scientists that tell a story about science, and like, and I kind of lure them in and, have links to, and, maybe they're going to be pulled in. So it's sort of the flip side of what Michael.
It is fascinating where stories end up, especially on things like forums. I wrote this post on discovery of carbon nanotubes in a 17th century Arab sword. And that got linked to in like sword makers forums, role-playing gamers forums, people who just like swords. Those are really interesting places. Right, over there.
Two things. One, just sort of generally talking about places where you can find science writing. For Christmas, I got a book called Logic Comics, which is a graphic novel biography of Bertrand Russell and the birth of the logic field in mathematics, co-written by a comp sci guy at Berkeley, and it was fascinating. There's a way to get it out. One of this is sort of a practical thing. I'm trying to figure out, I work the Show Observer, and we've just started for here and at Raleigh a couple of science pages. I know it sounds like a miracle. I can tell you how we got the money, but that's another story. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is find the bloggers in the Carolinas, find the writers in the Carolinas. So I'm trying to figure out how do you guys get together? I mean, it's like there's people out here wanting to write, there's people out here wanting to be your editor. How do you, aside from, hey, see me after the meeting. Yeah. But really, is there a forum or a website? I mean, there probably is, and I'm just still getting into this. And I'm an editor, not a scientist. How do people get together? If you want to sell your stuff, where do you go? How do you guys find freelancers?
Well, there's, for starters, the National Association of Science Writers, which has a fairly big website and membership, so you should start there, nsw.org.
Yeah, it's like $25 or $50. You can send an email out to all of their members. So,
And I think there's probably a few Carolina sites.
I
that run it.
suspect, we're not going to get out of this room alive.
At various points when we're looking for more content, we just put a story up on our site saying this is what we want in terms of writing samples if you want to give it a
Well, we've
shot.
done some of that. We've gotten some good people. We've gotten some good I realize that I sort of run an ad here, and I apologize for that, but I am talking practically for people on how to do it.
Well, it's a strange thing that at any level of the magazine and publishing world, as a writer, you're quite aware that you're trying to squeeze through a thin door while a lot of other people are trying to. Yet, again and again, editors, even at the very best places, say they're always, they're always wishing they could find more really good stories and more really good writers. So it's hard, and I don't know how you do that. And as a writer, you just keep kicking the can until you get in, or you're dead. So I don't know from the other side, but it's a weird paradox that even at the Times Magazine, you always feel like they're short on good writers, whereas there's a million trying to get in.
Got a question?
Yeah, I want to follow up on that and also Michael's earlier comments about the value of hyper-local science reporting. I think that's something that hasn't been mentioned. I saw the value of this when I was a AAAS media fellow in the Orange County Register last summer, and especially as newspapers, a lot of other newspapers are dropping science coverage. But then at the same time, we have a lot of very local bloggers, science bloggers. One thing that, if you want to get attention, that you could do is take that science and talk about it in a very local setting, like explaining to people what the weather is happening right here in that state and bringing it and helping people relate to very general concepts, but in their backyard. And then if you do it like that, then you could catch the attention of folks like at the Charlotte Observer or local mainstream media that might be looking for good science bloggers to add to their plate. And so this way, a lot of great science is at large national journals like we have here, but then there's a lot of value in bringing it local too.
Is there anybody who has done a really good hyper-local science blogging effort?
I have to sort of promote my former mentor, but no, I think he's doing a good job. Gary Robbins at the Orange County Register, and that's who I was learning from, and just taking a note of local industries, like who's in the area, where do people work, what parks or animals are around, and just bringing it down. And you could still cover a lot of general science topics or really cool science, but just linking it with something that the everyday people can relate to.
Okay, so we're running into the last of 10, 12 minutes or so. Can I just check if anyone, have we had any questions from our colleagues on Second Life? 3, 2, 1. Someone's meant to be watching it, and no. Okay, I apologise if anyone on Second Life had questions. One thing I did want to raise was one of the questions that we posed on our wiki page. And this is a topic that I do know for a fact that the entire panel is unanimous on. So, I'd love. So, apparently they want our opinion on futurity, which is a collection of, it's described as journalism-like write-ups of research produced by the universities where the research originates, put forward as something to fill the vacuum left by the decimation of MSN science writing. Who wants to launch the first sound?
I mean, this is, I have not been to the futurity site, but it's important to recognize that this is not journalism by my previous loose definition in which there's some arguable level of disinterest in how you...
Or transparency.
Or transparency. And this is the frightening part of that, is it looks so much like a news site, I'm told. And if it does, that's very problematic. It's not declared. It should be declared. And that's the problem with taking press releases and journalism and publishing them as news and not noting that this is based on a press release from UNC, well, I don't use UNC, from Stanford University or wherever it came from. And that needs to be declared so the reader has some idea.